Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you guys doing?
We're fine,
We are
sir.
fine, sir.
Yeah, I got carried away. I went to the field to do some field work, and I got carried away. So thank God I'm here, and thank God we are able to organize the class. I hope you got the message and you had access to the materials on the LMS page.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's very good. How are you guys doing? I'm sorry we are always in a hurry, so we always don't have enough time to check up and see how you guys are doing. I hope you are all coping well with the challenges brought on us by COVID-19. I'm sure you are used to it by now.
Not really. We're still trying to adjust, sir.
If anybody will complain, Obioma should not complain. She seems to be enjoying herself, of all of us.
Yeah, I'm complaining. No.
You are the one enjoying most, so you shouldn't complain. Anyway, let's quickly see what we can do. I'm aware that some of us will need to go for prayers and then to break their fast. So I will try and be very, very snappy so that you can go and break your fast and do other things. So we continue our discussion on forest protection and conservation. By the way, I'm recording the session. So after recording, I'll see if I can post it on the LMS so that I'll send the link to you so that you can watch it on YouTube. Is that okay, everybody? I hope that's okay for me to
Yes, sir.
record.
That's fine, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's proceed.
Yes, sir.
And I hope everybody got the information that we rescheduled the class. I hope everybody got the message.
Almost everybody, sir.
So who and who didn't get the information, please? I don't want to shortchange anybody. Who did not get the information that we rescheduled the class? Anyway, apologies to them who would record and then they can watch the presentation afterwards. So we already know what forest pests are. If you remember in the introductory class, we talked about damaging agents to forest, and pests are among these. Pests can be human, it can be amazed that human beings can be pests too. It can be animals, vertebrates. But the major pests that disturb forests are insects of different kinds, as you would see in our discussion today. So, and insects tend to lead to a reduction in growth. They can cause deformation. They can reduce wood quality. They can cause mass death of plants or trees in ecosystems if they are not managed. And they can cause death to plants. And so one of the ways you try, one of the efforts you put in place in forest protection and conservation is pest monitoring. And this should be a major part of your management plan, of your forest management plan, because it allows you to be able to detect, early enough and assess the level of infestation if you have already included pest monitoring in your management plan. So whether you are managing at the long term or in the short run, you already have something in place so that every time there is an outbreak, a disease or a pest outbreak, you have management alternatives in place. You have an idea of the type of damage control you want to put in place, the costs, what are the benefits, what are the legal implications. So you don't end up using a particular pesticide that has been banned by the government in your country or by the international agencies. So, and one of the things you need to put into your management plan would be, how can I use integrated pest management to ensure I can achieve sound forest health? So, because like I said earlier, There are some pesticides that are unacceptable that you don't use. For example, you don't use Gamali 20. You don't use a particular one called is it diadrain now that you are not allowed to use, because when you use the pesticide on the land, it finds its way into water bodies and then it will cause the death of aquatic life. So some of the questions you need to ask yourself when you want to make management decisions about pest management or pest control include whether the problem you are looking at will increase or decrease or remain the same over time. So would there be economic damage if you don't do something, if you don't intervene? For example, uh, pine beetles, southern pine beetles, they destroy the cambium layer of the trees. And when they do that, it means the tree can no longer supply nutrients and water from the roots because they cut off the connection. Because the cambium layer is where growth occurs in plants. And then that eventually leads to killing of the trees. Whereas in some places, you may have outbreaks that the plants will be able to adjust and overcome over time. So there's something we call pheromones. These are like hormones that you have in human beings. So, and we can use them in as baits to try and catch insects. But we can then see, we're also able to identify the type of insects that are disturbing our forest or our plantation. Because female insects release pheromones that attract the male insects. So when you're able to get those chemicals and put them in place, you're able to trap the insects and be able to identify the type of insect pests that are disturbing the plantation. And the major insect pests that we will discuss in this class, which are also common in forestry, and I'm sure in your course in CPEB, you would have been introduced, I think it's the introduction to entomology, which your class would have participated in 300 level, and I think in 200 level. You have defoliators based on the feeding mouth parts of the insects. You have borers, and you have general feeders. Now, in insect pest attack, you have what we call, those that we call primary invaders, which bore into trees or shrubs and provide opportunity for other insects to invade the plant. So they are the primary invaders. And there's so many of them. You have beetles, you have borers, wood borers, you have twig pruners, you have bark beetles, the ones that feed on the bark. You have engravers. These ones engrave. You know when you do engraving, so they bore into your plant and they engrave parts where fungi and other pathogens can then come in, have access to your plant. You also have wood boring caterpillar, which they feed on the wood. As you know, caterpillar is one of the stages in the life cycle of an insect. So the insects go from egg to worm or caterpillar to pupa and then adults. That's the general life cycle of insects. Then you have secondary invaders, which come in and then weaken your tree. Some of them suck sap from your tree, and eventually some may eventually kill your plants. For example, you have termites, carpenter bees, and carpenter ants. You also have pests at the nursery level. For example, if you raise pachyia in the nursery and you have rodents around, the rodents will come and dig up the seeds and feed on them in the nursery. You have nematodes, you have grasshoppers, which are defoliators, termites, worms, and crickets or Zonosaurus variegatus that feed on the seedlings in the nursery. Now, how do we then control these pests? You have, like I said earlier, it's always nice to develop an integrated pest management approach where you could use systemic chemicals, you could use chemical control, You could even use silvicultural practices to control pests. And what do you need to think about when you want to choose your control method? One, have you been able to identify the organism or organisms that are disturbing you? What is the level of infestation? What is the potential damage? Do I really need to spend so much money in trying to control when my plants can overcome the pest attack after some time? I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's
Yes,
continue.
sir.
So you evaluate the benefits and the risk involved. If you use a particular pesticide, for example, will it have a secondary impact on other organisms, maybe aquatic life around, maybe other plants that may be not your non-target organisms? So these are things you would consider when you are selecting your method. You can also look at the regulations in place, whether at the local, state, or federal level. And all this will influence the control practice that you want to use. And then accurate record keeping is also very important so that 5 years down the line, if there is another outbreak, you can say, okay, we had this problem 5 years ago. How did we undo it? Can we use that method after 5 years, or do we need to change tactics? Now, in pesticide application, you have uh, you have just a minute, let me try and pull this over so that I can see. Okay. So you have to select the pesticide or the fungicide, the insecticide, or the herbicide you want to use. And there are different pesticides that you use at different levels, whether in the nursery or at the plantation level. So some people use, even though now we discourage it, they use pesticides for site preparation, where they use some herbicides to kill weed. But over time, people have been able to show that this has negative consequences on non-target organisms on such sites. In some cases, vertebrate animals can also be controlled. So if your problem is with rodents, for example, you can set traps, or you can put poisonous baits or repellents to either chase away or to eliminate the source of threat. What are some of the insecticides? And you will see I've put some links there so that you can read more about these pesticides. Generally, applying insecticide may not be practicable against forest insects when you have very large expanse of forest or when the infestation is limited. But there are still certain pesticides that are used, like what we call insecticidal soaps, you have horticultural oils, you have BT insecticides. One of the videos that I put on the LMS, you would see them practicing using some of those methods, where there was one where they mixed some chemicals and they dug some hole and poured those chemicals in the holes. Those chemicals are systemic chemicals. It is expected that when they pour them in the hole, in the soil, the roots of the plants, of the trees will absorb them, and then it will go into the plant system and kill. So when the pests then feed on the either on the leaves or on the bark, they get the poison and then they die. So you have explanations about the various insecticides that are used today. So you can read up on some of these and read materials that I sent to you or that I put that were posted on the LMS page. A unique biological control is when you use an organism to kill another organism, to control the population of another organism. And one of the ones they use commonly is Bacillus thuringiensis, BT insecticides. And when the caterpillar feeds on this, on maybe the leaves of the tree that have been infected with this BT insecticide, it affects their digestive system, and eventually these caterpillars will die. And most of the time, this particular microorganism, this particular bacteria, is not harmful to mammals. It's not toxic to mammals. Another one will be imidacloprid, which is also a systemic chemical used to kill sap-feeding insects. There are other examples of various insecticidal products used. You can go online to read more about the positives and the negatives of this pesticide. Now, so that is chemical control. You can also use silvicultural control to try and regulate pesticide outbreaks on your uh, sites. So, for example, when you do selective cutting, when you thin, so selective cutting means you go into your forest or your plantation, you identify diseased or dead trees, the ones we call dead trees or snags. After identifying them, you come in and you do control felling. You cut them and you either burn them or you extract them from site. Thinning is another one because a lot of the times there's a signal that pests get from weakened trees, from diseased trees that actually encourage attack. So once you are able to find these weakened trees and you remove them, you can reduce the propensity of your site becoming infested. You can also do cleaning after harvesting, and then mix planting. When you mix the diversity on your site, that would also help you regulate pest invasion. Now, some of the pests that we talked about earlier, I just put a few here that you can read up. You have bark beetles. These are really a major problem in most parts of the world because the bark beetles use trees as breeding sites. They lay their eggs in on the back of trees, and then when the eggs hatch, the caterpillar go in and begin to consume and form tunnels in the trunk of your tree. This is an example here of a particular trunk that has been infected by bark beetles. This is an example of a bark beetles. So healthy trees have defensive compounds that they can use to kill or injure these insects or to immobilize them and suffocate them with the sticky fluid. Some plants have that ability, protective mechanism that they use to overcome this pest. Some don't have. An example, a very common popular example is the ambrosia beetle, which also carries a fungus. So when it creates a tunnel in the stem of the plant, it deposits the fungus because the fungus, it will lay its eggs, deposit the fungus, and then when the eggs hatch, the caterpillars appear, and then the fungi goes ahead to further destroy the structure of your wood. So you need good silvicultural practices to reduce the impact of bark beetles. And when we get to good forestry practices, there's a topic we're going to discuss. Some of these things we also mention them and some of the things you do to try and control them. So you also have round-headed and flat-headed wood borers, which also have a similar mechanism of attacking and destroying your wood. You have defoliators. So defoliators or leaf feeders feed on your leaves. And when they feed on your leaves, they reduce photosynthetic activity on your leaves. They can also encourage the secondary attackers like fungi to have access to your plant through defoliation. You also have soft lights, which are also a problem, particularly at the larval stage. At the larval stage, the larvae resembles caterpillar, and then their outbreak can lead to large, it can affect because they go and feed on the meristematic tissues, the growth points where your plants are growing, the apical buds, they feed on them. And then eventually they will kill your plant. Then you have caterpillars. Caterpillars become butterfly. And caterpillars are mostly, a lot of them are defoliators, and an outbreak can lead to an overwhelming destruction of your forest site. So these are some of the things, problems that we have with pests. We are still going to talk about diseases. This is more of a summary of what you have learned in 300 level in particular. And so we are just building on that knowledge here, that you must always think about pests and also diseases when you are planning protection and conservation of your forest. So thank you for listening. So I hope you got the gist. Are you still with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Awesome.
So can we take questions now? Questions? Questions?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Go ahead. Have I lost? Have I been disconnected? Am I still online? Hello?
Yes, you are.
You're still
online,
online.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dr. Dadawa Joko. All right. Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Kilaosho. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Part of the consideration for pest management, you made mention of we should know whether they are endangered,
What do you mean by that?
or whether they are going to extinction. So
What is going into extinction?
I think you're talking about
The pest?
the pests that we want to control.
No,
Yes.
a pest. When you say something is a pest, it means it is damaging your system. So you're not a pest is a problem that you have to care. I mean, you have to cater and take care. You understand?
I
So
actually thought you were
you
talking
don't
about the
consider,
pest.
no, you don't consider whether your pest is no, a pest is a problem that you have to solve because it's going to damage your
Okay.
crop. Is that clear?
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's quickly see if we can watch this video. And it's about a minute or 3 minutes. I think we still have some time. So just a minute. I want to share this. Let's see. All right. Okay. Let's hope this works fine.
Serenity, peace, awe-inspiring. These are just a few words visitors use to describe the majestic forests of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This 800 square mile preserve encompasses some of the largest tracts of old-growth forest east of the Mississippi River, including trees nearly 200 feet in height. Protecting the forests of the Great Smoky Mountains is not only the duty of the National Park Service, but of all visitors that come to enjoy them. Though guarded from logging and commercial development, these forests face a constant threat from non-native insects and diseases that can wipe out millions of trees in a single year. Invasive forest pests have already devastated a litany of tree species here. In the 1960s, a tiny insect from Europe called the balsam woolly adelgid decimated over 75% of the mature Fraser fir trees in the park. In the early part of the new millennium, another adelgid species, this time from Asia, killed most of the large eastern hemlock trees. Some of these trees were champions, recognized by the American Forest Organization as the largest of their kind found anywhere in the world. The impact of the woolly adelgids is plainly visible today on many of the park's mountainsides. The National Park Service has treated tens of thousands of trees with various pesticides and biological controls. However, this process is expensive and labor-intensive and only protects a limited number of trees. And now an even more ominous wave of destructive non-native forest pests may be headed for the Great Smoky Mountains. This new onslaught includes insects that could destroy not 2 or 4, but well over half of the species of park trees. Most of these insects, such as the emerald ash borer and the Asian longhorn beetle, can easily be transported from infected areas to the park as stowaways in firewood. The very best actions the National Park Service can take against this new threat are preventative. For this reason, the Park Service has announced restrictions on the types of firewood that can be brought into the Smokies. A wide variety of forest pests lay eggs or stow away in firewood. Transportation of firewood has been implicated in the spread of gypsy moth, thousand canker disease, Dutch elm disease, Cyrex wood wasp, and gold-spotted oak borer. The new rule states that only heat-treated wood with certification from USDA or state departments of agriculture may be brought into park campgrounds for use in campfires. Campers can also use dead and down wood they gather in the park. Certified heat-treated wood will be available for purchase from concessionaires in many of the park's larger campgrounds, as well as from private businesses in the communities surrounding the park. Certified heat-treated firewood is packaged in 3/4 cubic feet bundles, clearly displaying a certification stamp. The wood is a high-quality hardwood product that has been heated for 60 minutes at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The wood lights easily, burns well for campfires, is safe to cook over, and is already available in over 85 locations near the park. Please do your part in preserving some of the most biologically rich and diverse forests in the temperate world. Leave your firewood at home.
All right. So I just wanted you to get some form of feeling of the importance of forest pest management. That's from the Smoky Mountains in America. And you can see how deliberate they are in trying to ensure that they can regulate pest outbreak. And what they have experienced in the past is really sad and alarming. So they are really very, very concerned. And if you remember, we talked about phytosanitary measures and certification of wood, of forest materials before you can import or export. These are some of the ways that have been, some of the measures that they put in place to ensure that they can protect their forests from invasive pests. In Nigeria, we are still a bit behind, but the documents that I put on the LMS page, when you read some of them, you will see that we are also, our environment is threatened by some of these pests. And if nothing is done, we may have an outbreak, particularly now that we have a lot of plantations across Nigeria. Plantation species are more prone to pest attack, while native plants, native forests are prone to invasive pest attack. So we must continue to think about this thing. We must continue to interact about and discuss them. And you as foresters and future foresters must always have that at the back of mind that in your management plan, there must be a plan for pest control, for pest monitoring, and for pest management. So I will take questions quickly for 5 minutes and then we can close so that those who want to break can go and prepare to break. Questions quickly. Questions? All right. If there's no question, I think we can call it a day. Thank you all for coming around, and please interact with the materials. And if it's possible, if you can download some of those materials and put them on the WhatsApp page so that the master students that have joined you can have access to them, because they don't have access to the LMS page. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All
Thank
right.
you, sir.
So
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
have a nice evening, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.